Assalamu alaikum Abdullah. Good afternoon. So I'll start off with congratulating the event organizers for having a very good, honest discussion on fintech, on the future of fintech, on economy. Number two, this is an important advice. I took a lead from a guy who's sitting right here, and he insisted on it. That's one of my best portfolios. Thank you, Fahad, for giving me that lead. So Fahad Shari'ah is probably having a very, very good eye on startups in the global market. And in my portfolio, that's the highest return. You know which one I'm talking about. So alhamdulillah. My background is telecoms. I used to head British Telecom for Middle East and Africa. I have been a venture capital fund co-founder and CEO for the last 7-8 years. I've run operators, data operators, ISPs in the region. And the one thing I've always seen is there has been a transition in the global economy ever since fintech took a start. Now, before I get to that, let me tell you something very interesting. The most successful entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial eco-cycles are those that are very troubled, that have huge challenges. If you don't have challenges, if you don't have troubles, there's no reason for you to be to your best. So I'll give you certain examples, right? So World War II, when it finished, the world realized we need serious engineering. So two of the biggest losers of World War II, biggest losers, defeated completely, surrendered, Japan and Germany, became the largest, most strongest economies because of their engineering. So the trouble and the challenge of World War II and the defeat led them to where they were. In fact, Japan, when they had tsunami, which literally wiped them off, they're still back. They're still very strong. So always when you want to think as an entrepreneur, you always have to think as an entrepreneurial challenge. And an environment of comfort does not encourage that. So what is the other thing that I do besides being a CEO of a fund is I'm a guest lecturer on entrepreneurship globally. My last lecture was for Oxford University-backed bootcamp in Infinitum Education, where we incubated 30 startups from scratch to funding in 3 weeks. Why is fintech very important to us? Because banking is very important to us. Why is banking very important to us? Because whatever money you make, you need to understand what to do with it. And the safest place to put all your money is a bank. That's traditional, but that's still the case. Now, some of the discussions here, that's why I started the discussion by congratulating Hilal and his team, Bashar and everybody in Aljarida Summit, is I love the honesty of the whole discussion. I'm sure you guys also realize it was a very honest discussion. I was completely baffled to know that TAP, the gentleman, I forgot his name, Harun, I believe his name was competing with a global giant in Saudi Arabia and winning business. He's winning business from a global giant. And if you look at what that means a lot of things for entrepreneurs and startup eco-cycles in Kuwait. It also means a lot for the traditional banking sector. This event started off with a brilliant presentation by Ooredoo, and their CEO came in, and he was very polite, and he was actually very honest. Because I'm from telecoms, I'll tell you, he did not take out all his guns. He showed you some of the smallest bullets he had. Because where telecom is going, it's actually overriding banking. In this region already, one operator has already applied for a digital license. So it's no longer the discussion about who's eating whose lunch, or where will dinner be served, or who's going to take that dinner away. There are players waiting to move in. Players with a lot of intent and desire. And intent and desire is what I believe the financial community of Kuwait needs. It has a lot of beautiful ideas, a lot of innovative ideas, but they need to have a little bit more thirst and desire. Now, if you look at what has changed since the last 10, 15 years, very little actually. We're seeing this little tap here and, a tally there and someone else there. Now, we all know that some of the biggest acquisitions that have taken place apparently is Talabat, Carriage. We know those numbers. But because I'm an ex that company and I can't mention it, It's a Kuwaiti company, 100% owned. They developed a billing system. It became the single billing system used by the entire Middle East and Africa market. You could go to Africa, you could go to Zimbabwe, Morocco, Egypt, Qatar, everybody were using their billing system. In 2010, 2011, Huawei, the Chinese giant, bought out that product for almost close to $1 billion. Kuwait has a lot of success already. What Kuwait needs is bigger ambition. I really welcome and appreciate everything I heard today, but I think this country and its participants are ready for the big game. Now, it becomes very challenging when you do it in the conventional banking space because there are the JP Morgans and the Citis and the Barclays of the world. But guess what? In Islamic banking, this is where it was born. Kuwait's KFH was one of the first Islamic banks in the world. So when you look at competing in the global space using the Islamic banking tool or platform, you are far more competitive, far more prepared, and far more innovative than everybody else. So I think that it's very important that the discussion now moves to where can we get the unicorns from? Which fintech, in my case, Sharia compliant fintech, will get a unicorn? Now, if you look at the status of unicorns, this is usually defined by the scale that is available to you. The populations within this region, when you go from Kuwait and you shift to Bahrain or you shift to Saudi Arabia or some go to Egypt, you're still within a very small domain. You know, what impresses me about knowledge and intelligence and sharpness of someone like Fahad is that he spends a lot of time in the global space, a lot of time. So when he understands the whole concept of recommendation, his recommendation is very precise. You know, the discussion him and I had in 2018 was so specific. Literally, he's saying, this is the amount you need to put and do it there. I think we need that kind of inclusion of intelligence, global intelligence, within the Islamic fintech space, especially for Kuwait. Because I don't think Kuwait is getting its share in the global space. Why? Nobody's stopping you. I said this in an event 2 weeks ago about who stops somebody from doing something nice, good, or amazing. Guess who? You. Why? Because as humans, we have 60,000 thoughts a day, 45,000 of them are negative, average. So by default, you will, I'm happy in Kuwait. Why do I need to go there? The gentleman, I forgot his name, please excuse me, who was for Tally. And I loved what he did. I'm a trainer for entrepreneurs, so I thought he actually dropped the documents. So I was feeling sorry for the guy, but it apparently was his show that he's going to drop the documents, he's going to pick them up, and he say, you don't need the salary certificate, you don't need this. Now, if you look at this business, right, buy now and pay later. Buy now and pay later globally is worth more than the entire Islamic finance sector. It's more than $3 trillion. What stops him from going to the world? What stops him? So I think I would like to bring everybody's attention to ambition. Everybody has great ideas, and I completely respect everybody's great ideas, but have ambitions. When we talk about the conventional banking sector, whether the conventional bank will override the telecom sector or whether the telecom sector will override the banks, guess what? There are countries in which Islamic fintechs actually applied for a banking license and took a banking license. So we are seeing a lot of cross-selling, cross-breeding happening within the sector. Why, for me, Sharia-compliant Islamic fintechs will have a beautiful day going forward? Because it's going to be easy. Very few competitors, very few. You will have a good lead before anybody can get to you. And guess what? You have 2 banks in this country that are the cornerstones of Islamic banking globally. One of them is here, apparently. Both of them actually are here. And I think those cornerstones institutions should start incubating a lot more global ambitions. Because for NBK or KFH to open a branch in the UK, They'll have to go through the most stringent regulator in the United Kingdom. If you thought Kuwait was difficult, you should check the UK, far more difficult. But guess what? It would just take them £5 to £10 million to open an online banking license, a digital license. The growth and expansion and reach is there for everybody, but they need to have that ambition. Institutions, decision makers, mentors need to mentor these talented people to tell them, hey, go big. Like Fahad said earlier, don't think you can just go into crypto and this and that. Why? Because out of experience, he realizes that the concept of dilution takes you nowhere. If that startup is doing so many rounds, you're getting diluted until you have nothing left. And then all of a sudden, you're like a little dot in the spot that nobody really matters to. As an Islamic banking industry, Kuwait should take its space, take its position into the leadership of that sector. If you look at the geography itself, if you just take India, Pakistan, Malaysia, Turkey, UK, and the EU, that's 500 million Muslims. 6 regions or countries, 500 million Muslims. And it takes you less than £20 million to get a proper license, giving everything, debit cards, lending, crowdfunding, the works, the whole thing. And you're getting your back-end core system from a bank like KFH or NBK. Tell me which customer will not love you in the UK. And you have to understand the fundamental difference. Of course you do, I'm just trying to repeat it for you, between conventional and Islamic, right? In conventional banking, a customer has options. He said, okay, you're giving me this profit, you're reducing these fees. In Islamic banking, no. In Islamic banking, until and unless you're completely convinced with the fundamental principle of Islamic banking, you will not do it, which means it becomes a religious thing for you, a belief matter for you. So you have a sector that is being run on belief. And yet, I don't see anyone trying to get into that space in the global market. I have had so many events in the UK, in Canada, in India, where Muslims are saying, please guys, we need something that is halal, that is halal. And the only halal thing we see in this region is halal food. There's more halal food events in the Arab world than probably in the Western markets. What you need is to let people be involved with the talent that I saw today. It was very impressive. It was really, really very impressive. For such a small section of the society representation of professionals and thinkers, I think this was very brilliant. I think that conventional banks and Islamic banks should take this talent very seriously. I think decision makers and regulators should take this very seriously. Because today, if Islamic banking fintechs are at something like 250 of them, that's it. There's just 250 Islamic fintechs in the world, which is less than 1% of fintechs globally, less than 1%. So you can imagine how much space you have. So I think there is a hope and future for everybody to grow. Of course we do. But we need to think and get those people and those minds into some sort of an incubation program, into some sort of a mentoring program for them to come in and say, we have a global ambition. If you do this, if Kuwait decides and the community of banking decides that we want to be the hub of Islamic fintech in the world, nothing stops you. Malaysia did it so many years ago, and they had nothing to go with. Luxembourg has issued 100 sukuk. London Stock Exchange has issued more than 100 sukuk. So I think, for me, the scary part is, I recently was in a meeting in Dubai, and I met this gentleman who was head and founder of an Islamic investment company with assets of more than $1 billion, and he's a non-Muslim. And I was happy. I said, wow, this is good, which means now this is a proper sector. Then I read a report which said that there are more people applying for Islamic banking studies as education than Muslims. How many more? 4 times more. Because all of us are becoming very comfortable. I'm a Muslim, so obviously I'm transacting in halal. Well, you're missing the bigger picture. You're missing the bigger picture. So I think one needs to take this ahead and take it to a focus area where you can develop something. Kuwait is known for exporting oil, correct? Gas, correct? Petrochemicals. My message to Kuwait, it's about time you export Shari'ah compliant Islamic fintechs. Thank you.